happy Friday. I mean, because by the time you actually hear this, it is Friday, and honestly, we made it.
Barely. Like, the caffeine from this iced coffee is literally the only thing keeping me tethered to the earth right now.
No, same. But we love you, we see you, and babes, thank you so much for being here with us on the Snark side. Truly, thank you to the Snark squad for surviving this week alongside us.
Because it was a week.
It was a whole month packed into 5 days, so we need to do a quick life check-in moment before we get into the actual chaos. Because as much as we live for elite reality television, we both have real jobs.
Unfortunately.
Right. Dentistry is calling, patients are waiting, the teeth are quite literally teasing.
People really do not understand the toll of the clinic. It's not just the physical labor. It's the emotional weight of managing human panic all day long.
It is entirely that. Like, I had a patient this week, and it's that classic dynamic where they absolutely dread being in the room with you.
Oh, the worst.
They look at you like you're holding a medieval torture device, and you have to adopt this extreme delusional, like, I don't want to be here either, but I will be, and we are going to make this fun energy just to survive the appointment.
Right, you're basically doing crisis negotiation.
Exactly. You're absorbing their anxiety, you're battling your own exhaustion, and you're still expected to perform, like, millimeter precise medical work in a dark space the size of a teacup.
It's an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
You're a doctor, but you're also basically doing stand-up comedy for an audience of one who fundamentally hates you and wants to flee the building.
That is exactly what it is. It's exhausting.
Which actually is the perfect mirror for what I have been dealing with. Because, well, babes, I'm going back to therapy.
Oh my God. Okay, pausing the iced coffee. I am fully turning my body toward you. We are celebrating this.
Yeah, it was just time. I realized I'm carrying around all this accumulated weight,
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here on this microphone week after week, analytically dissecting everyone else's behavior, reading reality TV stars to filth for their lack of self-awareness.
Right. We are harsh critics.
Exactly. And then I looked in the mirror and thought, wait, I need to unpack my own baggage. But honestly, it is exhausting.
It is so incredibly messy.
The reality of setting boundaries and actually looking at the messy work of healing is not what social media promises. It's not like a cute aesthetic infographic.
Right, with the pastel colors telling you to take a bubble bath.
Exactly. It's brutal, ugly, crying in your car type of work.
It is so hard, especially when you are a high-functioning person. That's the trap, right? You think, I have my career, I have my friendships, we host a show, I'm totally fine.
You mistake productivity for emotional health.
Yes. But unpacking that suitcase of trauma, it's like you finally unzip it, and suddenly there is a metaphorical sweater from 2012 that still smells like deep resentment.
Oh, wow.
And you actually have to hold it, look at it, and deal with it. I am so incredibly proud of you for doing that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
And honestly, cheers to everyone in the Snark squad who is doing that exact same work right now. To everyone healing, moving on, setting boundaries, and just trying their best. Babes, we love you. That is not easy work.
It really isn't.
Huh?
It is all about protecting your peace, which is incredibly darkly ironic, considering what I did next.
I know.
Because while I am actively trying to heal and protect my nervous system, I also brought absolute, unmitigated chaos upon us this week.
My heart just palpated.
We have to talk about the family group chat.
The literal family group chat. If you miss this on our stories, babes, let me set the scene because my blood pressure is spiking just thinking about it.
Please do, because I am still analytically processing the sheer audacity of what happened.
So earlier this week, my brilliant co-host's mother decides to create a brand new family group chat, a fresh slate of digital communication.
Right.
And naturally, because we share a brain and a soul, they add me, their bestie, into this family chat. Because I am family. We are chosen family.
Exactly. You're an extension of me.
Yeah.
It made perfect logical sense. You are in the trenches with me, so you should be in the chat.
But the energy, the tone, the sheer unadulterated passive aggression of this digital space.
It was heavy.
It was like stepping into a psychological thriller. Random messages with absolutely no context, emojis being weaponized in ways I didn't know were possible, and then the ultimate shade.
It was a tactical strike. You have to understand the pacing, too. My mom is typing. You see the 3 little gray bubbles dancing?
The dreaded bubbles.
They disappear. The tension builds. They come back. And then she drops a message casually stating that it is just so funny how there are 2 dentists but no doctors in the chat.
I spiraled. I literally abandoned my physical body and spiraled into the
They're
stratosphere.
pacing.
I was pacing the clinic break room, clutching my phone. I'm looking around. Excuse me. We went to school for a million years. We took grueling board exams.
Literally so many exams.
We are doctors. Dentistry is being a doctor. We perform oral surgery. I was emotionally compromised for an entire afternoon over a single text message from your mother.
And see, this is where my analytical brain had to detach from the raw emotion of my best friend spiraling.
Because you're sick.
Because from a sociological standpoint, it was just too fascinating. Like, okay, technically, factually, we do possess doctorates. But we have to look at the power dynamics she was employing here.
Oh my God.
She isn't stating a medical fact, right? She is using a deeply ingrained societal hierarchy to establish dominance in an iMessage thread.
Almonds.
It is maternal competitive toxicity at its finest. She's essentially saying, I see your doctorate, and I raise you a traditional, historical medical hierarchy just to keep you humble.
It's absurd. It is high camp. It is literal reality TV.
It really is.
We honestly need a Bravo producer to come follow us around with boom mics and film family group chat. Crisis edition.
Forget Ladies of London. This is where the real drama is.
Low-key, and I say this knowing it might ruin our lives. Are we considering recording an actual episode with our moms?
Oh my God. I am simultaneously terrified and deeply intrigued. We have to weigh the pros and cons of this immediately.
Bro, it would be iconic. An instant viral moment. The chaos would be unparalleled, and the Snark Squad would absolutely eat it up.
Guaranteed irreversible emotional damage.
True.
A complete and total loss of narrative control on our own show. And we would probably both end up needing to double our therapy sessions for the next 6 months.
Yeah, the unhinged energy might actually break the internet or just completely break our spirits.
It could either be genius or the worst decision we have ever made in our adult lives. There is no in between.
You know what? You're entirely right. We are clearly spiraling. The tea is hot, the trauma is fresh, but I need to protect my fragile nervous system today.
Same. We need a distraction.
Let's redirect this messy, chaotic energy where it truly belongs. Let's get into the elite, expensive, delusion-fueled class warfare of the Ladies of London season finale.
Let's do it. Because we have reached the end of an era. Season 4, Episode 10, The Summer Showdown.
I am actively in a state of mourning, like moving through the 5 stages of grief right now.
It really delivered on every single level.
I need to start this recap by just praising the absolute, undeniable perfection of this 10-episode run. It was a masterpiece of reality television.
A complete sociological study.
Right. From the very first episode to this finale, they gave us everything. The high fashion, the brutal class warfare, the underlying childhood trauma bubbling to the surface.
The passive-aggressive text messages that rival my mother's.
Exactly. I am on my knees praying to the Bravo gods for a season 5 renewal. If we do not get a renewal, I am staging a peaceful protest.
The internet is completely with you. The post-episode discussions across the forums were just hundreds of people demanding another season.
It's what we deserve.
It truly was a triumphant return to form. They managed to find the perfect alchemy of personalities, the exact right ratio of delusion to self-awareness, of new money desperation to old money repression.
So perfectly balanced.
But we need to start dissecting this at the very beginning of the episode, because we have to talk about Myka.
Myka, the self-proclaimed queen of manners. Now, I have to be completely honest here. When she first came onto my screen at the beginning of the season, I was heavily side-eyeing the whole etiquette coach storyline.
Oh, totally. It felt super grifty.
Like, what is this fake made-up profession? Who actually pays for this in the modern world? But I have to give her her flowers today. She has completely secured her crown.
She really did.
This massive UK etiquette event she threw. She shed all the grifter allegations and fully proved she is a strategic mastermind.
She hosted this huge, beautifully curated event at a luxury venue to teach the art of showing up. She had the branding, she had an audience, she had the aesthetic dialed in.
It looked expensive.
But as much as we respect the hustle, we have to pause and snark for just a second on the actual substance of the advice she was giving from that stage.
Please.
Because she gets up there in her perfect posture, and her big, groundbreaking, life-altering tip is when you walk into a networking room, carry your chilled glass in your left hand so your right hand is dry and free to shake hands.
I mean, stop the presses. Groundbreaking. Call the Nobel Committee. We have cured social awkwardness.
It is highly intuitive.
Yeah.
It's basic physics and condensation.
It's literally just water on a glass.
But here is the genius of Myka. She delivers this painfully obvious information with such infectious, authoritative energy that people in the audience are literally nodding and taking furious notes.
She completely owns the space.
Mark Francis, who is arguably the harshest critic of human behavior on the planet, even said she owns etiquette.
But what makes this entire persona truly fascinating is the deep lore the Snark Squad uncovered about her past this week. Have you dug into the threads?
Oh my God, yes. It blew my mind and suddenly made her entire personality make absolute sense.
For those who missed it, babes, the internet sleuths discovered that before Myka was teaching British aristocrats how to hold a champagne flute, she was a literal professional circus performer.
A circus performer. When I read that, the puzzle pieces snapped together so violently I got whiplash.
Right. Surviving this specific cast of women, managing Dara's chaotic energy early in the season, gracefully dodging Margot's emotional meltdowns.
Yeah.
It is the ultimate psychological juggling act.
Literally juggling.
She has been training her whole life under the literal big top to survive the metaphorical circus of British high society.
It explains everything. It explains her incredibly rigid, unflappable posture. It explains her core strength, and most importantly, her ability to maintain a bright, beaming smile while everything around her is on fire.
The show must go on.
Exactly. In the circus, if someone drops a flaming baton, you smile and redirect the audience's attention. That is exactly how she handles reality TV conflict.
But while Myka is thriving on stage with her dry right hand, the real emotional devastation of the episode is happening in the front row.
Yes. This is where the episode completely shifted gears.
I found myself getting surprisingly emotional. We have Mark Francis and Miss Say sitting together waiting for the seminar to start. And Miss Say, who, against all odds, has become the designated emotional support Swede for this deeply damaged cast, turns to him.
And you can just see immediately that Mark is physically unwell.
His energy is completely depleted.
He leans in and tells her he hasn't felt this awful, this deeply unsettled in as long as he can remember. And Miss Say, with a lot of emotional intelligence, gently pushes him. She asks directly if it is about Margot and what happened at Longley.
And Mark Francis, this man who has spent his entire adult life wrapped in cashmere, sarcasm, and emotional detachment, completely cracks open.
The armor just falls off.
It was heartbreaking. He details this backstory that finally explains the core of his psychology. He tells Miss Say that when he was a little boy, he went to a traditional, elite, all-boys school with 1,000 kids, and he was the only one out of 1,000 who was obviously visibly gay.
Can you even imagine the absolute, unchecked cruelty of an English boys' school in that era?
It's a literal nightmare factory.
Those institutions are built on conformity.
Yeah.
To be the sole outlier among 1,000 adolescent boys is to be hunted on a daily basis.
Exactly. And he speaks about the immense, suffocating shame he felt. He says he was relentlessly bullied to the point where, at just 16 years old, he was feeling suicidal.
That's so dark.
He felt completely isolated, and he tells Miss Say that he made a conscious decision right then and there. He would build an impenetrable fortress around himself. He would construct a curated, flawless life, and he would only ever allow himself to be close to people he implicitly trusted.
Right, people who understood his aesthetic and his soul.
He created this beautiful bubble to ensure he would never feel that vulnerable again.
It is a classic trauma response.
Yeah.
You control your environment meticulously so you can control your emotional safety.
And then he makes the mistake of letting Margot into his orbit.
Yep. He steps out of that circle of trust for a brief moment on this cast trip, and what does Margot do? She looks at him and calls him a freak.
And Mark says the most devastating, insightful thing. He says, the moment you go out of that circle of trust, you realize that everyone really does think you're freaking weird.
That line broke me.
I was legitimately tearing up watching him say that, because that is such a profound, universal wound for anyone who has ever felt othered. You do the hard work of building your safe space, and then one careless, flippant comment from an outsider just rockets your nervous system right back to being a terrified 16-year-old.
Miss Say handled it beautifully, though. She didn't offer toxic positivity. She immediately validated him. She looked him in the eyes and told him he is beautiful, he is loved, and he is not weird.
She was deeply grounding for him.
She was. But as analytical as I try to be about the human condition, we had to pivot and talk about the visual absurdity of what happened next.
Oh, no. I know where you're going.
Because Mark Francis, overwhelmed by this sudden vulnerability, starts to cry. Real, genuine tears. And we have to shout out the Vulture recap by Brian Moylan, because he pointed out the visual dissonance perfectly.
It was surgically accurate.
Mark has injected so much Botox into his face over the years that his facial muscles simply do not know how to accommodate human sorrow anymore. Moylan compared his face straining against his tears to a mushroom zombie from The Last of Us.
I am laughing, but I feel terrible about it.
It was so unbelievably mean, but it's true. His face was actively fighting the emotion.
The grief was trying to exit his body,
Right.
and his forehead was like, absolutely not. We were remaining completely smooth. He was glitching.
The high-end injectables were actively resisting the emotional breakdown, and he admits he never cries in front of anyone. So the sheer panic sets in, and he flees the room to go cry in the hallway.
Which, flight response activated, makes sense.
Right. But then Missy, who's currently sitting in the front row of an etiquette event, jumps up and chases a crying man into the hallway.
Causing a massive commotion.
Literally seconds before Myka walks out on stage to teach people how to behave in public.
The irony is almost too perfect, causing a massive scene right as a seminar on showing up gracefully is beginning. But honestly, it showed she prioritized her friend's mental health crisis over social decorum.
True. Loyalty trumps etiquette. But speaking of retreating to safe spaces, while Mark retreats to the hallway, we have to pivot to Margot. Because Margot also fled a stressful situation.
Oh,
She fled the cast trip, and where does she retreat to? Her literal children.
My blood pressure is spiking again. We have to talk about Margot's parenting choices. We cut directly from this highly emotional moment with Mark to Margot. She goes home to her luxury house, and who is she debriefing this adult social conflict with? Her stepson.
Young, impressionable children.
Children. They walk in, ask how her trip was, and she completely unloads on them. She tells these boys that she suffered a panic attack, and all the women were incredibly mean to her.
And then, in her confessional, she proudly states that her family is furious on her behalf. And because of this, the kids now hate London and have a negative view of the entire city.
It is the ultimate reality television red flag.
Let's analyze the mechanics of this. When you see a cast member who has alienated themselves so completely from the ensemble that the producers are forced to film them venting to minor children or pets, their time on the show is limited.
You do not involve children in your reality TV beef.
The Bravo subreddits clocked this immediately. Someone commented, "It's the kiss of death for any Bravo cast member."
It is textbook parentification. Why are you trauma dumping on your stepsons about petty reality TV drama? She is actively manipulating their view of the world to validate her own desperate need for victimhood.
It is highly manipulative, and it speaks to a deep insecurity. She needed an echo chamber because the adult women were holding her accountable. But she also knows she has to clock back into work. She needs a scene.
Right, she has to film.
So she invites Mark Francis to sit down and clear the air. And this leads us to the sit-down of the century.
And amazingly, Mark actually agrees to go. They meet up for sparkling waters overlooking the Thames, and Margot starts off playing this very specific, calculated role.
A faux humble apology tour.
Exactly. She says she is nervous, admits she hasn't been kind, acknowledges she hasn't been a good friend, and claims she wants to take responsibility.
On paper, it sounds like a mature start to a conflict resolution. But Mark is a steel trap. He sits there, perfectly postured, and rigidly refuses to accept it.
He clinically lays out exactly what she did.
He tells her that calling him a freak took him right back to feeling suicidal at 16. And then he straight up says, "I am not ready to have all that thrown back at my face by someone who clearly has narcissistic tendencies."
He diagnoses her as a narcissist to her face, on camera.
Brutal.
And I will say, I actually found myself pushing back on Mark a little bit here. I understand he was profoundly triggered, but he was so incredibly cruel and cold.
You think so?
Yeah. If he didn't want to accept her apology, he could have just politely said, "I appreciate you saying that, but the damage is done," and then gracefully walked away. He didn't need to weaponize psychological terminology and verbally eviscerate her over sparkling water.
See, I have to strongly disagree with you there. I think Mark saw exactly who she was and what she was doing. He recognized that her apology was entirely performative.
You think it was just for the cameras?
Completely. She wanted him to say, "I forgive you," so she could be the good guy again. And when he denied her that absolution, her mask completely slipped. Because look at what Margot does the exact second she realizes he won't forgive her.
Babes. The pivot, I lost my mind.
She pivots to the most delusional defense mechanism I've ever witnessed on television.
I literally paused the episode, got up off my couch, and walked a full lap around my living room. She looks at this impeccably dressed gay man who just poured out his deepest childhood trauma regarding his sexuality and says, Well, the reason I called you a freak is because of your behavior. You came up to me, you touched me, and you tried to be flirtatious.
The flirting accusation. She accused Mark Francis of hitting on her at a safari park.
I am still reeling from the audacity. Did she genuinely, in her heart of hearts, think he wanted to sleep with her?
It's baffling.
And it wasn't just the slip of the tongue, because in her solo confessional, she literally doubles down and says she thought there was sexual tension and he wanted to F-word her.
I know, we have to unpack the psychology of this. How completely detached from objective reality do you have to be to construct a narrative where a gay man who visibly despises you is actually just sexually frustrated by your overwhelming allure?
It's wild.
And this is exactly why Mark was entirely justified in calling her a narcissist. What we witnessed was a textbook narcissistic injury. Her ego simply could not handle the pain of rejection.
So she just rewrites reality.
In her mind, the only logical explanation for a man not liking her is that he is secretly obsessed with her and acting out because he can't have her. She chose to blow up the relationship with an accusation so delusional that Mark's reaction is truly the only sane response available.
He doesn't yell, he doesn't defend himself, he literally just laughs in her face.
A laugh of pure disbelief.
He says, "I try to be flirtatious, you are the most delusional person ever." And then he stands up, adjusts his jacket, says, "Enjoy your afternoon," and walks away.
And calls her a lunatic under his breath. "Enjoy your afternoon" is the most devastating, aristocratic dismissal. He just evaporated from her presence, leaving her sitting alone with her own absurdity.
It was an iconic television moment, but this profound delusion about Mark's physical attraction to her naturally brings us to the subject of her wardrobe.
Well, thank God.
Because if Marco genuinely believes she is walking through London emanating irresistible sexual magnetism, she needs to explain to us and to God what is happening in her closet.
We desperately need to talk about the runway of horrors. Joshua Kane is hosting his summer showcase at the exclusive Mandrake Hotel. Everyone arrives looking tailored, expensive, and intentional. And then Margot walks through the door.
I physically recoiled. My retinas were assaulted. We have to break down the outfit piece by tragic piece.
It was a crime against textiles. She wore a metallic open-knit shrug that was essentially a crop top, exposing her midriff at a high-end showcase.
Tragic.
She paired this with what Brian Moylan expertly described as a hobo handkerchief skirt. Irregular, jagged pieces of distressed fabric fighting for their lives. And she topped it off with this massive plastic-looking heart necklace that looked like she won it out of a claw machine at a dirty arcade.
It was giving archival Charlotte Russe. For anyone who didn't grow up going to American malls in the early 2000s, it was giving 2004 mall rat going to a middle school dance at a high-end London fashion showcase.
The juxtaposition was jarring.
And the absolute worst part is that she has the audacity to be deeply offended when people judge her clothes. Margot, you are a walking cry for help.
Especially compared to Joshua Kane's runway, which was fascinating to watch. The tailoring of the suits was absolutely impeccable.
It really was breathtaking. And I swooned. I fully, genuinely swooned when Lottie walked the runway. She is heavily pregnant, looking radiant. And Joshua's speech at the end, he talks about becoming a dad, looks at Lottie and says he can't wait for her to become a mom, and kisses her. It was so soft, so romantic.
It was a very sweet cinematic moment. But we cannot discuss Lottie and Joshua's dynamic without bringing up the heavily debated restaurant scene from earlier in the episode.
Oh, the ordering scene. Okay. Lay out the debate for the Snark Squad, because I actually loved this moment, but I know you saw something sinister.
Okay, let's look at the facts. Lottie and Joshua go to a nice restaurant, and Lottie proceeds to order absolutely everything for him. His drink, his appetizers, his main course. She dictates his entire meal while he sits there silently.
Right.
Now, there was a massive thread on the subreddit about this. Some people thought it was incredibly empowering. A woman taking charge, dominating the table.
And I am firmly in that camp. I thought it was a cute, intimate dynamic. She knows he's exhausted from designing a collection, so she takes the mental load off him. What is the issue with a woman taking the lead?
The issue is not a woman taking the lead. The issue is the underlying vibe of his incompetence. Is it cute, or is it a sign of something much weirder? Joshua is a grown man with a successful career. Why is he seemingly incapable of speaking to a waiter?
Well,
It gave me less empowered wife and more eccentric, tortured artist who thinks he is far too elite to bother speaking to working-class hospitality staff. Like My pregnant muse shall handle the logistics with the peasants while I sit here and ponder my polka dot suits.
Okay, when you phrase it exactly like that, ponder my polka dot suits,
Mm-hmm.
you are making an incredibly compelling point. He does lean heavily into that tortured artist trope.
Very heavily.
But honestly, in a season completely saturated with toxic behavior, I'm willing to give them a pass. Speaking of healthy dynamics, though, we have to bring the chaotic energy back down for a second. The show gave us a genuinely profound moment of real human growth.
You were talking about Miss A visiting her brother's grave.
Yes. It was such a stark contrast to the rest of the episode. She goes to the cemetery, she brings flowers, she talks openly about how hard it is to be there, she is crying, vulnerable. And then we see someone walking up the path. I fully assumed it was going to be Mark Francis, but it was Kimi.
Which is a massive, unexpected moment of character growth. Because early in the season, Kimi was incredibly uncomfortable talking about death.
Yeah.
She physically recoiled from Missy's grief.
They really fought over it. But to see Kimi do the internal work to push past her own deep discomfort with mortality, to physically show up and hold Mrs. hand, that is real, tangible friendship.
It was a beautiful, quiet moment.
And honestly, Kimi showing up to a cemetery in those incredibly cool, dark, oversized designer sunglasses, a respectful, chic, supportive queen.
The glasses were undeniably chic. But of course, because this is reality television, the universe demands balance. For every friendship that heals, another one must be completely obliterated.
The final boss fight of the season.
Martha and Margot. The absolute dismantling of a 20-year relationship over tea.
While Kimi and Miss A are holding hands, Martha and Margot are sitting down to fundamentally destroy 2 decades of history. And we have to set the visual scene. Martha Sitwell showed up looking like absolute, undeniable royalty.
She looked stunning. She had her hair pulled up, wearing this gorgeous structured dress and an elegant fascinator.
She was serving pure, unbothered, wealthy aristocrat. She looked like she was about to attend a royal wedding, not a reality TV execution. And Margot was sitting across from her in whatever tragic, mismatched ensemble she had pieced together. The visual contrast alone told you who was going to win.
It really did. Martha, who hates confrontation, does not hesitate. She looks across the table at Margot and delivers the most surgical, cold-blooded read. She says, "You've been ungracious, you've been bitchy, and you've been arrogant."
I gasped. I literally inhaled my iced coffee to look your alleged best friend of 2 decades in the eye and call them bitchy and arrogant while cameras are rolling. Margot immediately defaults to her only playbook, playing the victim.
Of course she does.
She makes the fatal error of trying to blame Martha. She says, "I'm not blaming you for anything, but you started making fun of my clothes first."
It is the ultimate culture clash, perfectly distilled. Margot is operating entirely on an American reality TV playbook. She wants to rewrite history and force a dramatic reconciliation. But Martha is operating on centuries of British upper-class repression.
Yes. Martha looks Margot dead in the eye and says, "We handle things differently here. No one talks about anything. We just bitch about each other behind their backs. That's English society."
It is the thesis statement of the entire show. Stop trying to force American group therapy onto a culture that has run entirely on passive aggression for 1,000 years.
Exactly. And this is where the lore gets so incredibly juicy. How did these 2 women even meet 20 years ago? During this brutal scene, Martha casually mentions they originally met at an after-party hosted by a Persian prince she was dating.
A Persian prince just casually dropped in.
Yes. And the Snark squad connected the dots. Because there have been long-standing rumors on the internet that before Margot was married to her wealthy husband, she was running in some very specific transactional circles. Rumors she was a yacht girl.
Oh, the yacht girl rumors.
Her very first acting gig in America was literally having sex on film. So she's at this Persian prince's exclusive after-party in London 20 years ago. As what? A paid party girl.
Yeah.
And she strategically latches onto Martha, who represents actual British high society.
It completely reframes their entire relationship. Was it a genuine connection, or was Martha always Margot's golden ticket into spaces she otherwise wouldn't have access to? And now that Margot is doing it on camera, the power balance has shifted and Martha won't tolerate it.
My analogy is that Margot is a bull in a fine china shop. She comes barreling in, knocking over Ming vases, screaming about her feelings, and then gets furious at the china for breaking. And Martha is the generational shop owner saying, "I am not sweeping up your mess anymore. Get out of my shop."
When forced to choose, Martha chose her London friends and her cultural norms over her American liability.
Period. She cut the dead weight. And that incredible confrontation perfectly transitions us into the analytical half of this show. Segment 1, royal energy or just rich?
I love this segment. In this cast of wealthy people who commands a room with regal presence and who is just throwing money around loudly, let's start with Martha.
Martha embodies pure, unadulterated royal energy. She rides her horse side saddle, she dated Persian princes, she carries her trauma with untouchable grace. When she speaks, it is a decree.
Absolutely, true power is quiet. Now, Margot.
Just rich, and barely even that, based on the Charlotte Russe wardrobe.
The dictionary definition of just rich. She demands validation instead of earning it. Now, the wild card. Mark Francis.
I'm going to argue that Mark has royal energy. Impeccably dressed, fluent in multiple languages, dismisses peasants with a single sentence.
I'm going to push back incredibly hard on this. True royal energy requires resilience. Mark Francis has what I call Victorian child fragility.
I am laughing so hard, I am coughing. Victorian child fragility.
Think about it. He requires a temperature-controlled, emotionally sterile environment just to survive a Tuesday. The minute he is exposed to a direct emotional confrontation, he breaks down and flees to a hallway to cry. He's like a sickly Victorian heir who needs to be sent to the seaside because a maid spoke too loudly and gave him the vapors.
I am officially deceased. You have ruined him for me, but you are completely right. Which sets up segment 2, Etiquette Bootcamp. If Mark requires a curated environment, how would he and Myka survive the messy digital world we live in?
Let's take the chaotic modern behavior from our opening banter. Sending a passive-aggressive text in a family group chat or leaving a 3-minute voice note. How does Myka handle the group chat?
The circus performer.
Myka would approach it with weaponized positivity. She would draw on her circus past to literally juggle the toxic relatives. She would reply to my mom with, "Your teeth look great, but you aren't real doctors. Love what you've done with your hair."
Yes. She would teach a seminar on digital posture. And what about Mark Francis handling the 3-minute voice note?
Mark would simply cease to acknowledge your existence. He would say anyone who leaves an audio recording exceeding 30 seconds is a raging narcissist. He would throw his iPhone into the Thames and hire a calligrapher to send you a wax-sealed letter informing you that you are dead to him.
It's so true. They would not survive 10 minutes in our modern group chats. Which leads us into segment 3, group chat translations. The passive aggression is an art form. Let's decode the shade.
Margot tells Martha, "I'm not blaming you for anything, but you started making fun of my clothes first." Translate that.
Translation. I am entirely incapable of taking accountability, so I'm going to aggressively rewrite history and gaslight you until you apologize to me.
Accurate. It is the narcissist's prayer via text message. Okay, decode Mark saying, "Enjoy your afternoon," as he leaves the table.
Translation. You are a peasant. Your outfit is a visual hate crime. I am permanently removing myself from your toxic aura, and I will spend the rest of the day drinking vintage champagne and dissecting your character flaws.
A visual hate crime. It's the ultimate polite kiss of death. Okay, final segment. Soft life or strategic marriage. Is it all about the money, or is there actual strategy behind these relationships?
I genuinely think Lottie and Joshua are living a soft, loving life. Pointing back to his speech at the runway, he looked at her with pure adoration. It's pure love masquerading as eccentricity.
And I am choosing to be the cynical reality TV historian. I think there's deep strategy there. Lottie ordering his food, managing his schedule. She is executing a strategic power play to manage the eccentric artist so the brand grows and the checks keep cashing. It's a corporate partnership.
You are so dark. You see the matrix everywhere. But let's spiral about the real strategic relationship. Margot and Martha. Was this entire 2-decade friendship just a long con?
I absolutely think so. Margot saw Martha as her golden ticket into a world of wealth and access. But the minute the camera started rolling, Margot's ego demanded she be the star. She tried to force her way to the top and fundamentally misunderstood the rules of the society she spent 20 years infiltrating.
She flew too close to the sun. Babes, what an incredible season of television. I am exhausted, I am intellectually fulfilled, and I am formally demanding a Season 5 renewal from Bravo immediately.
It's required viewing. And to the Snark Squad listening right now, thank you for hanging out, laughing, and dealing with our very expensive, chaotic energy today.
We appreciate you so much. A reminder to subscribe to the podcast, rate the show, and please share this with your messiest friend.
But before we go, I want to leave everyone with a lingering question to mull over this weekend. A final provocative thought.
Ooh, hit me.
We talked about Martha casually mentioning she met Margot at a party hosted by a Persian prince 20 years ago. If Martha was there dating the prince, who exactly was Margot there with? And what other deep, dark, transactional secrets is this British high society keeping just off camera?
The chills. I have full-body chills. I need the 2004 prequel series immediately. Babes, have the absolute best weekend.
Big classy.
Stay chaotic.
And we will see you on the Snark side.